So why is it so triggering? Why is it more triggering than some other dissident view that's nonetheless considered an acceptable dissent? I think why it's triggering is that it calls into question the foundations of science. And to me, that has to do with the metaphysical assumptions that are unexamined, that are taken for granted, that form the basis of our mythology. And I call it a mythology. We don't understand really what a mythology is, for the most part. We think that it's kind of these fanciful stories about gods and goddesses, and that we have transcended mythology. We no longer have mythology. Instead, we have objective science. But when you look at the institutions of science through a mythologist's lens, you see that they bear the narratives of science and the institutions of science and the hierarchy of science, and all of these things bear a very close resemblance to a religion. So these metaphysical assumptions underneath science include things like objectivity, include things like the way to understand the reality of something is to break it down into its smallest possible parts. This is core to the way science was first articulated as a field by people like Galileo and David Hume. Galileo, for example, said, only the measurable is real, and called these things primary qualities. These are the real things: distance, mass, things like that. Things that you could contain in a number. And the ambition of science became to expand the realm of the measurable until everything could be reduced to a number, including even consciousness, including life, including emotions, including love. And ambition said that once you can reduce it to a set of data, here's what love really is. It is a biochemical cascade in the brain that has this, and this characteristic, and if it doesn't meet these criteria, then it isn't love, and if it does, then it is love, and we can hook you up and test whether you really love. Like, that would be a scientific account of love. So that was the ambition, to expand the realm of quantity, of the primary qualities, until there was nothing left. So David Hume, and I'm going to just leave you with this quote, Rupert, and see what you have to say so far. Excuse me, I got this morning thing here. So David Hume said, he wrote somewhere, does it contain abstract reasoning about quantity and number? No. Does it contain something about experimental matters of fact and evidence? No. Commit it then to the flames, for it contains nothing but sophistry and illusion. Commit it then to the flames. So, what does that stimulate in you?
I'm not sure that I would have started from Hume, but Hume's a kind of ambiguous figure, because after all he showed that causation is not out there in the world, and he led to a kind of inward turning where we see that the way that we understand nature depends on our minds. And, he affected Immanuel Kant, and Kant's in philosophy is that the way we see the world is through the lens of our own minds, through time, space, and causality. We impose those on any vision of nature that we have. They're not necessarily out there, but they're the only way we can understand it. Now, although Kant's a very influential philosopher, and although it's very relevant to science, scientists basically have ignored Kant and Hume, because they just assume there is causality and that time, space, and causality are out there in the world. I mean, this philosophical revolution had very little effect on the kind of naive realism on which science is based. So even today, Hume and Kant would seem tremendously sophisticated. It's only in quantum theory where people began to say, well, the observations need an observer, and the observers... A lot of people think this is very profound in quantum theory when they say observations need observers and observers are conscious, and people say quantum theory has brought consciousness into science. Well, Arthur Schopenhauer pointed out in about 1810, all observations need observers, and therefore science can't possibly function without the minds of scientists. So it's not really a new insight, and it's not really anything specifically to do with quantum theory. I think what it points to is the way that the sciences have separated off consciousness, which was the realm of secondary qualities. Galileo said that things like smell and taste and colour are not real quantities in nature because they're in our minds, and by which he meant really inside our brains.